I often like to go out running in the summer or whenever the weather is nice. This happened a week before I was supposed to start high school. I thought about going running that day, but I got the idea in the morning, and I like to run in the evening while the sun is still up. But it isn't as hot in the day, and there isn't a chance for it to get hotter if I don't manage to get back in time like in the morning. Well, of course I forget my promise to myself and only remember it around 9 p.m. Now it's the end of summer, so the sun is already setting sooner than I'm used to, but I go, I'll get back in like an hour or so it'll be fine. I already have been putting off running, so I didn't want to put it off again. I should probably mention that I'm a young girl, and even though a lot of girls I know change the side of the road they walk on when they see any drunk-looking guy walking, but I was always the one calling them pussies, and I was ready to take on the first rogue who tried to get to me. I also live in a less populated area out of the town where almost everyone knows everyone, so I was feeling extra sure of my safety. What a naive fool, I know. So I go out and I start my run and everything's fine. It's getting a bit dark, but I can still see the running track, so it's all good. I start to feel a bit off when I see a pair walking in front of me. When I get closer, they turn out to be just teen guys, and I run past them with no problem. When I finally reach the usual point in my run where I turn around, a cemetery, which is ultra creepy if you think about it, but it has benches and it's a small graveyard, so I never really felt worried about taking a break there. It has already gone pretty dark. I drink some water from my bottle and just stand under a tree next to the gate in the territory of the cemetery, but I don't sit down where I usually do because the bench is next to a fence and the darkness has finally made me a little wary about being alone and someone jumping me or something. It's pretty funny that that's what scared me the most at the time. When I catch my breath, I stay for a few more minutes, just listening to the wind. I see a bike drive past the cemetery, taking the route I will be taking while running back. I leave my resting place and it has gotten really dark. Dark enough that I could only barely see 2 meters in front of me. I start slowly running back. After 15 meters or so, I start hearing voices. A couple more seconds went by and I can clearly hear someone talking. My thoughts immediately jump to a conclusion that there are at least 2 people in front of me if I'm hearing a conversation. Now I slow down even more until I get close enough to actually hear what's being said. Keep in mind, it's completely dark, and this road doesn't have any streetlights, so I can't see anything. I get close enough to finally make out the words, and my heart sinks at what I hear. I can't recall the exact words that were said, but the general idea was, the male voice said, "I see this girl. I could just pull her into the bushes." There were tall bushes lining one side of the running track. At first my heart stops, but immediately after I go into fight or flight mode, I can hear my heart beating in my ears, and I'm full of adrenaline, the bad kind. I know I can't just stop, or he will know I heard what he said, so I continue to walk. But thank God that the running track is separated from the road by a small grass field, so I go to the side of the road, making some distance between us. I keep looking at him, and keep in mind, I still don't even know how many people are there, but I see a square light, presumably a phone. Then I hear him jump on his bicycle and drive off. It turned out he was talking on the phone, but just because he was alone didn't mean I was less scared of him. I walk on the side of the road for a few minutes until I'm sure he would be far away from me, and once I get back on the running track, I sprinted home like crazy. All the way back, I was shaking with fear and looking at the bushes and the cars that passed me with delirium, squishing my water bottle in my hand, and I was ready to smack anyone who came close to me. When I finally reached the first road and the lights, I felt like I escaped death. My New Year's resolution in 2012 was to get in shape again. After my first kid was born, I had lost my athletic interest, but I had every intention of getting it back. So I started running 4 days a week with my friend Hannah, who is a great runner and motivator. We would run after work, usually 5 to 10 kilometers, favoring the forest trail. It's the kind of trail that has lighting in the darker months of the year, so you can run there anytime really. Once you turn on the lights, you have about 45 minutes to run the shorter trails and longer to run the longer ones. Then the lights shut off automatically. We had been running and training for about 2 months when we started seeing the same man hanging around the parking lot every time we got there. He was a thin man, maybe 25 to 30 years of age. Always dressed in sports clothes, but never actually running. He never looked you in the eye either. We speculated that he could be homeless and camping nearby because he was constantly there. We got used to seeing him sitting somewhere close by and silently and always on his own. We kind of felt sorry for him, and he never really seemed to talk to anyone or interact at all. But there was something about him that made us hesitate to talk to him or ask if he was okay. I can't pinpoint exactly what it was, but something wasn't completely right with him. One evening, Hannah didn't make it to our run, and I decided to go on my own. I arrived at the parking lot, my car being the only one there. I did some stretching, turned on the lights, and set off on the 5-kilometer trail. I hadn't seen the silent man when I started my run. Perhaps it was getting too cold to sit there, now that it was autumn, dark, and getting close to the freezing point. He must have been there, though, somewhere in the shadows, because when I got to the top of the first steep hill, I could hear heavy breathing somewhere behind me. I look over my shoulder and I see him. He is running like a man obsessed, in regular shoes, not running shoes, with his arms moving in a really strange, stiff manner, as if he was made of metal, his hands like arrows, straight and in an upward-inward angle, sort of like a sprinter, but more extreme, moving like a robot. For the first time, he looked me straight in the eyes, and it was the eyes of a predatory animal, and it made my heart freeze. He had never done anything to harm me or anyone else as far as I knew, but the look in his eyes alone was enough to let me know that I was facing a very serious threat. I started running faster, trying to create distance between us, and I could hear his heavy breathing getting even more strained. I ran like my life depended on it, with my adrenaline pumping through my body and giving me new strength. I tore off my necklace and I threw it on the ground, thinking I must leave a trace if he takes me. Something must be left behind. I tried screaming, hoping someone would be close enough to hear me, but I couldn't scream my lungs out and keep up the pace at the same time. Why is he doing this? What does he want? And who is he? I thought, as I started to feel my lungs burn. Then I thought of my 1.5-year-old daughter, and I ran until I could taste blood in my mouth. He was still behind me, maybe 100 meters behind now, but I figured that if I tripped and fell, or ran out of energy, or fumble with the car keys once I reached the parking lot, then I'm screwed. So once I reached the sharp turn on the trail, I went off the trail and ran straight into the dark woods. I ran only a short distance, and then I laid down flat on my stomach, with my hand searching for a rock to defend myself if he found me. I realized that I was wearing bright running clothes with reflexes and neon coloring. I had never felt so visible in the dark before. I could hear him reach the turn, and thank God, he kept on running. I started to slowly and as silently as possible move further into the darkness, but my heart sank again as soon as I heard rapid footsteps closing in from the trail. He had realized that I must have gone off the trail once he saw that there was no sign of me ahead. He stopped and I stopped. I could imagine him listening for any sounds, and I held my breath and begged a God I don't believe in to make him go away. After a while, I heard him say something in a language I didn't recognize and walk off. I didn't move. I feared that he would wait for me by the car, and I realized that I had to get off the trail and onto the main road and stop someone because I couldn't go back to that parking lot. I started to make my way further into the woods, knowing that I would eventually end up on the last part of the long trail and close to the main road. The lights on the trail suddenly shut off, and that kind of made me calmer at first. The dark was a comfort and protection. But then, after only a few moments, it switched on again. This could mean that another person had just started their run, and soon I would have someone there to help me. Or maybe he was out there looking for me. Or maybe even getting ready to prey on another lonely runner. I decided against waiting to find out, and I continued my way towards the main road. It was dark and I fell multiple times, with my clothes getting wet from the damp vegetation, and I started to get cold. After what felt like a lifetime, I could see the 10-kilometer trail ahead, and I knew I was close to the main road. Soon I could hear the traffic. Once I made it to the road, I must have looked like I had been in a terrible accident. Blood from several small cuts from the falling, my clothes dirty, and my face, I assume, petrified. My bright runner shirt soon attracted the attention of a passing car. My waving and desperate shouting made him stop. The driver was a 40-ish man with 2 kids in the back seat. and he spent the next 10 minutes or so trying to make sense of what I tried to say, between the sobbing and the crying. He asked if I wanted a lift back to the parking lot, and I told him no, and to please take me home instead. At home, my husband insisted on going to the parking lot to retrieve the car and calling the police. But report what? I asked. No crime had been committed, and I just knew that he was out to get me. My husband went back for my car. The driver's seat window was smashed, and my phone was gone, and so was the photo of my daughter that I had hanging from the mirror. I don't know what he was trying to do, or why he chased me the way he did, but the look in his eyes, there was no doubt he had bad intentions. Okay, so the first thing you need to know about me is that I love to run. I absolutely love it, no matter the weather, the terrain, or time. I love to run. Well, I got to a point in my life where my obsession with running got out of control. I would get home late from the bars, drunk off of my ass, and instead of passing out like normal people do, I would go run. It started becoming the norm for me. Hit the bars, get home late, and then get my gear on and take off into the night for a jog. I started to fall in love with the nighttime. There was just something so poetic about the night. The way the moon glowed bright, the silence, the danger, and the serenity of being alone. I was hooked. I figured, hey, what a great way to get ahead. While the world sleeps, I will better myself. I was so blinded by my obsession that I didn't realize how much danger I was putting myself in. So one Saturday night, I decided I was tired and didn't want to go out to the bars, that I would take the day off of running and rest up. About 4 hours and 8 diners, drive-ins, and dives episodes later, I'm starving. But there wasn't any food in my house, and it was making me upset. Instantly, I had the great idea of, hey, I'll go for a run and get my mind off of my hunger. By this time, it is 4 a.m. and pitch black outside. I stretch and plan my route out in my head. If you were to map my route out, it would make a perfect square. I figured I will run down Street A, make a right, run down Street B, make another right, then run down Street C. Lastly, make another right and run down Street D. And I'll be back to where I started off. So I take off into the night, and it is amazing. The cool breeze against my skin, and the way my shadow danced as I passed each streetlight. The music romancing my eardrums. I hit my runner's high, and I am moving, and I mean moving, like going as fast as I can, just pushing myself while the world sleeps. I get to Street C, and my ankle begins to hurt. At first, I brush it off and keep going, just pushing through the pain, and pushing through the night, leaving each step in the past. But just as I'm about to make my turn onto Street D, my ankle buckles and I just cannot go on anymore. So I reached down and untied my shoelace to let my ankle breathe. I picked my head up and started hobbling along. I'm walking down the left side of Street D now on the sidewalk, music still blasting, when I get a really bad feeling. I mean, like my skin is crawling, my stomach is turning, and for some reason, my gut tells me to look behind me. I turned my head to my right to check over my shoulder, and that's when I saw him. On the right side of the street, quickly creeping his way around a pond, trying to make his way over to me. His long hair shaded his eyes in the darkest hours of the night. He didn't see me notice him at first, but my eyes stayed locked on him as I watched him. He moved quickly, with his head never rested. It turned left and right constantly as if he was on the lookout for something. I'll never forget the way he moved. This sort of crouched-like running. He made it around the pond and was heading straight for me. When he looks up and realizes I have turned around and have been watching him for the last 7 seconds, I kid you not, as fast as our eyes met, was as fast as he stood up and turned around and took off into the night between 2 houses. I was absolutely terrified, and at first I reached for my phone to call the police, but something in me said, no, this is my neighborhood. I refuse to feel unsafe. And right then and there I lost it. I don't know what it was inside of me, but I snapped. I took off after him, and I forgot about the pain in my ankle, and I ran as fast as I could. The hunted now became the hunter. I saw him cross the street and into more backyards. I just followed, screaming at him, "You coward, come back. You want me? I'm right here." But he didn't. He just kept running and shook me in the darkness. I'll never know what he wanted from me, and that's what keeps me awake at night.